Okay, we are live. Let me just double check that everything's working on the other end. It says for waiting. We're not officially live. I don't see it moving. I mean, we are live, but there's always a delay. There we go. Got it. All right. Hey guys, welcome back to my regular Wednesday night live stream. I'm kidding. I'm not going to use this. It's very muffled. There's a reason I have this with me, and you guys will find out in a future video. But anyway, okay, so unfortunately, I got a strike, for those who are wondering, on my channel for a series that I've been hosting. Now, the series has been getting a lot of rising traction on a lot of what others would consider conspiracy theorist channels. Either way, the point is the series is doing well. And I'm pleased about that, but that also just means, unfortunately, that YouTube deems it inappropriate. So unfortunately, because of a series named Planned Illusion on my channel, I got a strike. So my next 2 lives will be on this channel. And then I think I might have to make a separate channel for lives and a separate channel for just regular edited content with me ranting in front of a computer. But that is irrelevant right now. I have Alexander Adams here today, noted art critic, as well as artist himself, as well as a poet. Thank you for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. It will be a nice change. So we'll touch on politics. How are you?
I'm very well. Greetings from England. Is this your first British interview?
You are my first British interview from Britain. I've had plenty of Aussies on my channel who are British. I've had 3 different Brits already, but they are all now living in Australia. So yes, you're my first Brit from Britain.
Well, it's morning. It's morning here in England, in rainy England. So
it's raining today too.
Yeah. So well, thank you for asking me on. It's great fun for me to be able to speak to. I think your audience is predominantly Australian, so I think it's going to be.
Except for lately, it's become super American because of the success of the series I just mentioned earlier.
Oh, okay.
But yes,
well,
but my audience is predominantly Australian.
Yeah, so this is a great chance for me to introduce myself to Australians. I think some of the Americans will know me from my streams with Benjamin Boyce. So they may already recognize my face, and they may recognize some of the topics we're going to talk about, but hopefully there's going to be some new content here as well. And British viewers will maybe know me from the James Dellingpole interviews that I did.
Yes.
So anyway, it's great to be with you.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you. I just wish that I had you on my original channel. My original channel has all the subscribers, and this channel is still growing, but it doesn't matter. I will eventually put this video up on my own channel, and I will also advertise from that channel to this channel, and from this channel to that channel. So we should get there. Okay, I am frustrated. I'm not gonna lie, I'm super frustrated, but
and the fact that it was a bit last moment as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I had just advertised everything for my channel, and then it said, oh, we're giving you a strike because of this video series that you put up. And I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, so anyway, it is what it is. I can't change it now. We're rolling with the punches, and it's not going to get the same viewership it would have, but it will once I get the ball rolling. So right now, it just is what it is. Okay, well, before we begin, I'm going to start with my tradition of reading a Bible verse before we continue on with any other topic. So let's do that. Okay, Psalm 143, verse 10. Teach me to do your will, for you are my God. May your spirit lead me on level ground. So that's nice. Okay, cool. All right, you actually reached out to me about a year ago, and I finally got back to you.
Yeah, I think you were covering the same sort of topics that I've been talking about. I mean, my principal work is, so I have different areas that I work in. So some of the time I'm an artist, so I'm painting and drawing. And if anyone wants to see that art, that's at alexanderadams.art. And the rest of the time I'm writing, and that's the poetry is something that takes up a small amount of time. The most of my time is writing art criticism, and that's generally just art reviews. But so I was writing art reviews from the late 2000s onwards, and then in 2015 I felt like I was forced into writing about the way art and politics intersects. So that's something that happened in 2015. So now I would say about 80% of my writing is art criticism, which is just normal art criticism. You know, what is this art? How does it work? Is it interesting? Is it successful? Why is it successful? Why is it unsuccessful? How does it compare to other things? And then the other 20% is calling out political correctness and the problem of quotas. We have quota programming. I'm sure that this applies all over the West now, where artists are selected because of their identity politics, basically their demographic characteristics. And this has really decimated the museums and the galleries, because people know that they're not getting the best art. They're just getting stuff that ticks a box, and it's very frustrating for them, and they're turning away from it. And the art critics are not discussing this honestly, or they weren't discussing this honestly.
Interesting.
So this is something that I've had to cover. So I've written lots of articles. You can find my articles online. So a selection of them are on Alexander Adams art.wordpress.com.
Okay.
You can read those.
I've actually, those are in the description box below already. I've done that already.
Good. Yeah. So and the recent the recent news is that I have published a book last year, which is Culture War.
Culture War. That's such a popular wording. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, after I chose it, of course, I found out that there are like a dozen books on this subject, but this is the one that deals specifically with art, with fine art, but it also covers some aspects of popular culture. So, for example, Comicsgate, which is where the full title of this book is Cultural Art, Identity Politics, and Cultural Entryism. And cultural entryism, well, entryism is it's a political term.
Apparently, this guy's read your book. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, but it's. Thank you very much. Entryism is basically where a group of people who have a political intention, they move into an organization and they take up different positions in the organization with the intent of influencing, controlling, or destroying that organization. And this has happened all over the arts. It's happened in public institutions, it's happened in private corporations, it's happened in NGOs, happened in charities, everywhere. And I'm talking specifically about the cases where it's happened in the fine arts, in the museums, and also in Comicsgate, which is where a group of activists moved into the big and the small American comics industry, and they started to change the characters and lower the quality of the writing, lower the quality of the art, because of course they were hired for, not because of their skill, but because of who they were. And then when the fans pushed back, these professionals, they would go onto Twitter and they'd go onto social media and they'd go onto the forums and they would denounce their audience, their customers, as Nazis, as racist, as homophobic.
Oh Lord, because that's the way to win people over.
Yeah, absolutely. So of course that completely decimated the entire industry. So now the industry is on its knees, not just because of COVID, but because you've had professionals sanctioned by their corporations attacking fans and insulting them. I mean, I think the professional thing to do is if someone criticizes your work, you either say nothing or you say, okay, I'll try to do better next time, and ignore it or whatever. But to come back with insults and abuse, and completely unfounded abuse, is not very professional. But the thing is that with entryists, they're not interested in the well-being of the company. They're not interested in the well-being of the profession or the field where they work. They're only interested in advancing their political ideas. So it doesn't matter if their company goes broke. That just proves that they weren't woke enough. They weren't politically correct enough. So they don't actually care if their corporation goes broke. And these corporations are finally finding that out.
That's crazy. So okay, this is a retarded question, but I feel like it's a relevant question. Is there a true standard to art? Because I've walked past galleries and seen a canvas and it's pure black. And it's like, oh, that's so deep.
Well, it might just been a hole in the wall. It might be literally deep.
No, it wasn't. It was a canvas painted black. Okay. And then it was called, yeah. So is there, exactly. So there's a movie called Mona Lisa Smile. It stars Julia Roberts and Julia Stiles, Kirsten Dunst, Jennifer Goodwin, all these people. And there's a scene in that movie where what's her name? Here we go. Give me a second. Sorry. Okay. Oh, by the way, you'll get questions at the end if that's okay by particular people. Yeah. Okay, cool. So, long story short, there's a scene in that movie where Kirsten Dunst's character is a real shit, and then Julia Roberts puts up something really grotesque, and she goes, "Is this art?" And then she's like, "No, it's not art. It doesn't have composition, this, all these words." And then she goes, "You need the right people to say it's art." And then Julia Roberts goes, "It's art!" Like that. So how do you respond to that as an art critic? Is there really such a thing as art? Or because you look at the Sistine Chapel, you know that that's art. But then you look at something really abstract and pathetic, like here in Melbourne, I'm not in Melbourne, sorry. But on the freeways, I'm in New South Wales now, I left Melbourne. On the freeways in Victoria, there's this hotel. It's a built hotel. But it's just a vessel. There's nothing in there. And it's art. Someone designed a hotel in the middle of nowhere, and it's art. But it's not. It's just retarded. So go ahead, build on all of what I just said.
But aren't all hotels now? All the hotels are empty now. So they're all art.
Yeah, but that's
you've got more art in Australia than ever before. This is amazing. Okay. So well,
yeah. Sorry, build on all of that. I know I gave you a lot there to work with. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So how many hours have we got? Okay. Yeah. So it depends what standards you're using.
Okay. Yes. Exactly. Go ahead. Well, what are the standards? And if so, that black painting ain't art. That hotel ain't art. Go ahead.
Well, you find that the standards are always disputed even within the fields. So you'll find that, there's debate about, who's the best Renaissance painter? The sort of, is it Raphael or is it Michelangelo or is it Leonardo and stuff? And so it depends what you value in their art as to how highly you rank them. But they're all, all of those three are great artists. Now, of course, the question is, how do you rate a sort of abstract art? But then,
Picasso, I suppose. Excuse me.
Well, Picasso's not abstract.
Oh, okay. Well, then ignore me. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, so then you've got to look at, what are you trying to get from the art? Well, obviously, you're not getting a story. You're not getting any narrative. You don't have any figures. But what you're getting is an experience. So it's like, imagine going to like a gig or a concert and you've got like a light show and you're immersed in this light show. And you can say, oh, I really like that light show, or that light show they did last year was really rubbish compared to this one. So you see, you're making comparisons between two things which are both abstract and neither of them have a narrative, and you can't really judge it on skill because they both involve some sort of skill, but it's difficult to evaluate them. And you have to take on the art on the standards that it claims to need to be judged by. But of course, you do also get people who are bad artists. In every field, you get people who are bad artists or bad art within those fields. So you have to be able to say, this abstract picture doesn't work as well as this one, because it's more clumsy, it's ugly. You know, the colors clash. The composition's not very involving. But yeah, I mean, there are obviously things you're more sensitive to and less sensitive to. So I mean, I happen to quite like abstract art, but I also like Renaissance art. And I don't see a conflict. I just look at them as different types of the same thing, in the same way that I like Shostakovich, and I also like drum and bass. So, yeah, but there obviously you have blind spots. I mean, like my blind spot is I don't like conceptual art and I don't like pop art.
What's pop art?
Well, pop
like
art
Lady Gaga?
Andy Warhol, Roy Lichtenstein with the little dots and the cartoon figures and the Ben-Day dots. So I've kind of got like a temperamental aversion to that, in the same way that I've got kind of an aversion to Baroque music. So yeah, that's kind of like that's a long answer of saying, well, it depends.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I asked the question in a long way, but that's fair enough. But all right. Well, so how did you come? So what were you first? Were you first an artist? It's stupid for me to ask if you were a critic first. Obviously, that came last. But were you a poet first or an artist first?
Well, I was writing and drawing from.
Oh, you're a writer as well. Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah, so I was writing and drawing for a long time. So yeah, I mean, I was like sort of writing, lots of bad poetry, but you know, you have to write, you know, 50 or 100 bad poems before you get to your first good poem. So I was doing that, and at university I studied fine art, which is actually making art, and history of art. So that's kind of like looking at art and writing about art.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I did the two at university, and then I didn't really use my art history side. I didn't use the writing side for something like 10 years, really. And then it was only when I was I didn't have a way of making any art because I didn't have a studio, that I started doing the writing.
Can't you just paint on a kitchen table with newspapers and just, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know. I just feel like you don't need all of that.
You could. I mean, the work I was doing at the time was oil painting, so I needed some sort of materials.
My apologies.
And I was also moving around a lot. You know, I was living in different places and I was moving around, so I couldn't really carry anything with me.
Yeah.
The good thing about writing is, of course, you can just put it in a notebook and you can stick it in your pocket. But anyway, I started writing art criticism. When I used to live in Berlin. So
there you go. I've been there. Cool.
Yeah, it's very nice. And I thought,
okay, I don't.
Well, it's
not a well laid out city. The city is not okay. Let's put our critique hats on, shall we? The city was destroyed and then it was rebuilt, and it was rebuilt in a way. It's just not. It's unbalanced. Don't you think there's no infrastructure there?
Well, it's unbalanced because, of course, it was rebuilt as two different cities.
Yeah.
There was the wall going through it.
Yeah.
So basically, you had this strange situation of having East Berlin and West Berlin. But that makes it such a fascinating place to be, because even today you can move from one district to another district and you can notice the difference between the past communist area and the past capitalist area. So it's something that I notice very striking. And although the division is getting less every year, it's still noticeable. And there's a lot of great art there. But
that's true. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So anyway, so I started writing art criticism.
Topic. Yeah.
I started writing art criticism while I was there
in Berlin. Yeah.
In Berlin, and I had this idea that I was going to be like a foreign correspondent or whatever. That I was going to write, you know, English language reviews of art in Berlin and Germany and stuff. And then I found out that there were about like 10,000 other art critics in Berlin doing exactly the same thing. But luckily enough, I was writing for one of the main places I was writing for was a place called the Jackdaw.
Nice.
Yeah. So this is a British independent newsletter which covered the fine arts, and they didn't have anyone in Europe, so I just ended up writing about reviews for them. And that's a good place for you to find independent art reviews. It's one of the few places that actually criticizes political correctness in fine art.
Good.
Yep. So it's got a British focus. So I would say, you know, if you guys in Australia or America want to start up something like this, so this has got a website, thejackdaw.co.uk. So if you have a look on there, you'll see what sort of material they've got. And they've got more material in the printed version. And I think I would really encourage Australians and Americans to try and set up their own publications, get away from the glossy journals and stuff, because they're all completely invested in identity politics. I
think Brett Weary, sorry, is a fan of yours. He seems to know everything you're talking about, and he's like when I redirected him, going, okay, so I can't do it on my normal channel. I would usually have a few more viewers at this stage because they'd be notified, and then, you know, I would have had maybe minimum 15, maximum 40, but which is good for me. Like, I know that doesn't sound great to you, but that's pretty good for me.
Hey, I don't have a channel. I don't know about these things.
No, but you did approach me to come on my channel, so that made me feel very special. Yeah. But anyway, back to topic. I was going to ask you as well regarding art. Do you believe, and this is, I know the answer to this question, I just want you to expand on it, and I think the answer is yes anyway, but that liberalism, maybe liberalism and leftism and atheism has seeped its way into art, and now art has become, for lack of a better word, shit.
Yeah.
Like,
well, we've got a problem. I mean,
go ahead.
Liberals or sort of left-leaning types tend to be high in openness. You can measure the different personality traits, and they tend to be high in openness, and that's what makes them good as artists, because they're quite sort of adventurous and creative. But obviously, political liberalism and political leftism is something slightly different. So, but it's not necessarily a problem, because you get all sorts of people who are left aligned, but in their art, it doesn't really matter. I mean, they're still doing still lifes, they're still doing portraits, they're still doing figures and landscapes and stuff.
That's not the issue. The issue is women sitting in front of a window, taking wool out of their vaginas, or like, just like, you know, like, the issue is that type of art. I was watching a show called The L Word. It's a pro-lesbian show, whatever. Or good.
Just for research.
No. I was watching the series because I enjoyed it. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it was. I'm not pro the LGBTQ agenda, but I still liked the show. I fast forwarded a lot of bits, but anyway, one girl was an art gallery director, and one performance piece of art was Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, having sex with Mary Magdalene. That is not art. That is offensive. That is rude. Yes, I sound like a lefty now, and like an Islamic person going, oh, well, you can't talk about the prophet or whatever. But that is not art. I don't believe porn to be art. Anyway, go ahead, expand.
So anyway, I mean, it was okay when you had traditional genres of art and you had conventional painting.
Yes, yes.
But then once you enter like the conceptual era. I mean, you've got Dada in the 1910s, but conceptualism really starts around sort of in the 1960s. So when that happens, and then you get postmodernism coming in 1967, which is now the dominant style for art. And I know people in the fine arts who are sort of saying, well, you know, we don't call it postmodernism anymore. We got new trends or whatever, but effectively they're just variations of postmodernism. And so now you've got this problem. You have lots of art which is made by people which has got very little commercial potential, and it's supported by an arts organization, an arts structure which is full of left-leaning people. So now what you've got, if you've got a market, so you've got all these bodies, you've got all these museums which have got funding for sort of weird conceptual postmodern stuff. So then artists say, oh, well, okay, then I'll provide what they need, you know. So it's like it's a supply and demand thing. If the arts weren't so dependent on public finance and sort of philanthropic charity stuff devoted to various identity causes, then you wouldn't have a market for this stuff, and you wouldn't have people doing these weird performances, because there just wouldn't be. I mean, it would happen, It's just no one would know about it because no one would be going, no one would be interested. It would be just happening in like someone's back studio in an industrial part of town, and there'd be like half a dozen people there.
We should do one with the prophet and the 14 wives.
It wouldn't be in an art center in the middle of town, getting funded by tens of thousands of dollars. So it's actually, I think it's partly a temperamental thing, it's partly a political thing, but it's mainly, I would say, an economic thing.
Yeah. Well, this Brett Weary brings up a good point. Remember Charlie Hebdo? Like, one can consider cartoon art, and with the twist of humor. Now, they were pretty fair because they mocked Christianity, which is fine with me. I don't care people mocking it, as long as like it's done fairly. But he did one of the prophet, and then he's dead now. So what are your thoughts on that as a critic, as an artist, as someone in life who has a sense of humor? Like, what do you think?
Well, I would say people should be free to do that, and they should be protected.
Yeah,
it's okay. It might be something disagreeable. It might be something you don't agree with.
Well, it's
but
like
I think
me
people
with
should
that lesbian. Yeah, like what they did with Jesus. I don't like it, but they have a right to do it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you also have a right to boycott it or say or say that you disapprove of it. But I mean, the thing about the Charlie Hebdo thing, it was a little bit sneaky because you had all these people, all these politicians saying, "Oh, we support your right to free speech and we will defend it, but don't offend this group or don't offend that group." But the point about free speech is that you have to defend all of it, as long as it's legal, as long as it's you're not inciting violence. Or you're not giving instructions on how to make bombs or whatever. You should be able to say what you like as long as it's not actually inciting violence. And that includes disagreeable things. That includes blasphemy. That includes political stuff that's weird. That includes racism. That includes anti-vax stuff. And you may not agree with that, but people should be able to see it. And you should be able to debunk it. You should be able to laugh at it. You should be able to present the facts and say this is ridiculous. But the problem is that with Charlie Hebdo, the politicians, they supported free speech, but they didn't want to offend the Islamists. So
it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, this world we're in. Okay, let's move on to, do you want to talk about your books and the topics of political correctness and stuff?
Yeah, well, what I'll do is I'll give you an exclusive. This is the new book.
Okay.
Which is published on the...
Iconoclasm.
Yep. So this is published on the 6th of October. So this is not out yet, but it'll be out in a few weeks. And this is where I discuss basically the madness that happened over the summer.
Okay.
With basically political people. We have mobs tearing down statues and so forth.
Yeah, we do. Because of, their slave owners, among other reasons. Thomas Jefferson was very kind to his slaves. He didn't treat them like slaves.
Well, but he doesn't. Basically, if you're white and I was going to say if you're white and historical, it's just if you're white, then then
that's it.
You're in trouble.
You're the enemy. I at least have minority. I have minority privilege. What the hell?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I'll have to find some sort of minority privilege. I don't know. Well, I could say that my ancestors were serfs in rural England. We were, we were more or less slaves. Where are my reparations?
Just tell people you're trans. Say that you used to be a woman.
How do you know I don't? Are you calling me? Are you saying that I look like a man? Are you saying that? Are you really saying?
You look really good. Yeah, you're the best transition female I've ever seen.
Oh, okay. Yeah. This took a lot of work. This is completely artificial. Yeah. Yeah. So basically the book, the new book sets out. Is called Iconoclasm, Identity Politics, and the Erasure of History. So basically it talks about past iconoclasm. Thank you, Nick.
Yes, I'm really happy that people are enjoying this because it's so different for my channel, and I'm not even on my own channel, but I'm glad. I actually wanted to ask this guy to come on my channel next week, but I'm banned from my own channel for a week. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so basically, the book starts with me talking about iconoclasm in different periods. So I talk about Egypt, I talk about Byzantium, which would be very interesting for you because it was a battle between Christians who believed that you should be able to worship icons, and those who said you shouldn't.
No, you can do whatever you want.
So there was a big battle in basically the 8th century. I think it's the 8th century BC, 8th century AD, where the Church of Byzantium, which was the Eastern Roman Empire, they were basically, there was basically a struggle between people who said it was legitimate to worship icons of Christ and the saints, and then there was the other side that says no, because what happened was an emperor came to power, and he said the recent earthquake and the recent problems we've been having in our society are because we have been worshipping icons. So the icons must be removed because this is forbidden. Because he's actually correct. He's forbidden. It's forbidden because it is. I'll find you the passage. So basically, there's this injunction in the Abrahamic religion, which is, "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth below, or that is in the water under the earth." So that's Exodus. And it says, and so basically that's saying you cannot make any depiction of anything, not just icons, not just saints, but anything.
It's idolatry. Well, because idolatry is idolatry is idolatry. You can't work your way around it. Yeah, there's no way around it. If you put anything else before God, it's not even about worship. It's putting anything before God. I'm not talking about heroes and people you can admire, whatever, that's fine. You can admire people and you can find someone to be a hero. But idolatry is putting something before God. I do it. Oh my gosh, I don't put God first, and I should. I'm a horrible Christian. Sometimes I'd rather watch. Back in the old days, it was Christina Aguilera. I was like, oh, Christina Aguilera's new singles out. Like, I put her before God. Like, that's not right. So keep going.
Yeah. So anyway, so this is the origin of our iconoclasm. And then there are later stages that I also talk about. So I talk about Wahhabism, which is
that's really random. That's all connected to your art book. Cool.
Yeah, because
smart fella.
Because Wahhab was, of course, he was a Muslim theologian in Saudi Arabia, and he said basically the same thing. He was saying, all of this is idolatry, and he said he made exactly your point. He said it's not just about
Christina Aguilera. Just kidding.
Well, almost. He said that anything that any authority that supersedes God is idolatrous. So that means not just images. That means national flags. Kings, national boundaries.
I agree.
So anyway, I mean, this is the ideology which was the basis of ISIS. So ISIS was following this ideology, and that's of course why they were intent on not only capturing countries but destroying statehood. They wanted to cross national boundaries, so they would erase the boundary between Syria and Iraq, because they did not believe there should be any boundaries at all. So that was why they were also destroying historical objects.
That's too far. He's taken it too far. Once you take Jesus out of it and you keep it with the utmost respect to Muslims, you keep it Islamic, it goes everywhere.
Well, anyway, so that's another thing. I also talk about the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution.
I love Russia.
Yeah, because
I've been there. I saw the palace. Yeah.
But the communists, of course, they said it was not only a matter of removing. It was removing not only the Tsar, but it was also removing the power of the church.
Yes, it was.
And so they had a complicated relationship with the church. And for any people who thought that actually Stalin was a little bit softer on the church than Lenin. Lenin was very anti-church. Stalin was kind of like, he didn't like the opposition, so when there was opposition he destroyed it, but basically he was like, okay, if the church isn't causing too much of a problem, I'm going to leave it. And after the Second World War, he allowed a sort of consolidation of the churches. And then weirdly, Nikita Khrushchev, who we all think of as a reformer, he was a political reformer, but he was a devout atheist, and he hated the churches. So which is something I didn't realize before I did the research.
Well, I wouldn't have known that.
And then I talk about communism, the decommunization of Ukraine. And then basically there's the rest of the book. The second half of the book talks about what happened in 2020, why people kind of lost their minds, how education had been kind of prepared and set people up to attack icons and to pull down statues.
Yeah.
So that's basically the two parts of the book.
Well, that's really exciting. I think that's super. I think it's really funny how history and art are so intertwined, but it makes perfect sense. I remember when I was in Russia, they were talking about how, what was his name? The one who, I forgot his name. How embarrassing. He knew Hitler. They were around the same era. What's that dude?
What, Mussolini?
The USSR. No. We're in Russia. Forgot his name. Was it Stalin?
You got Stalin?
Stalin. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, fine. No, sorry. Yeah. So he's he's from Georgia originally, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So him, they approached him and they said to him, "What do you want us to do with the train station?" And he didn't. Yes, it was Stalin Port. I just had a mind fart. He didn't really listen or care. They were like, "What do you want us to do with the train lines?" And then he was drinking a coffee. He puts his coffee down on a piece of paper, and then they go, "Oh, okay, so that's what he wants us to do." So the train line is a circle. So everything revolves around a circle because the coffee cup underneath stained the original architect or infrastructure person's thing. And so they built the whole entire train system around the fact that his response was putting the coffee cup over his blueprints, I suppose. And I'm like, whoa, okay. And when you're there in Russia and you're in the trains, you're in the train stations, you see these windows and they're very churchy. You know, those church window, that church window look is beautiful. But during the USSR era, they blocked them all. So they didn't destroy the windows, but they blocked them all. And so then when it all came back, they let the windows show again. But all of the buildings in Russia are very communisty, and that's how all of the buildings today in Victoria, in Australia, maybe Australia-wide, I'm not sure, but certainly in Victoria and New South Wales, the buildings that people live in, they're usually considered the buildings where, I forgot what you call them, government housing. Housing. They look communisty. They look similar to the ones in Russia. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, you have like the rise of brutalist architecture, which is basically where you have lots of concrete slabs, really basic windows, a lot of windows that don't open. Yeah, you have centralized centralized heating. Yeah, well, I mean, the idea is that the principal idea was that it was supposed to be easy to create and it was supposed to be cost efficient because, I mean, obviously after the war there was a problem because a lot of housing had been destroyed, and so they wanted to build lots more properties, and they wanted to. Some of the old buildings were unhygienic. They were, and they were dangerous. So they were moving them in, but they were building to satisfy themselves, and often they were cutting corners, and so you have these buildings which are not properly designed, or they're not properly finished, or they're actually not properly built. You have lots of cases where you had we had some serious problems in Britain where you had concrete slabs that didn't have the right amount of sort of reinforcement. They weren't connected properly, so just because people weren't paying attention, and it was this sort of factory mindset of just churning stuff out and not paying proper attention to the quality. And so we had some disasters. We had some buildings which collapsed, and now some of the problems that you see with the buildings, especially buildings in Berlin, East Berlin, is where things were built, but they were built in a really poor way. So now they're falling apart, and the rust is splitting open the concrete and so forth. And so that's yeah. So you have brutalism was very common in Eastern European countries, basically because they didn't have to please anyone, because no one was buying them. No one was buying these properties because this was all public housing. So people were going in, they didn't have a choice. They didn't have a vote. There wasn't the local councils. There wasn't any way of the local population saying, oh, we prefer different kind of housing. So that's how a lot of this stuff got built, was because it's a question of the authorities having complete power over these things. And that's how you ended up with so much concrete building in Eastern Europe.
Yeah. Do you think removing God from school, curriculum, whatever, society creates crap art?
I think it certainly contributes to it.
I think so.
Because I think if you don't feel like you're being held to because I mean, a lot of art comes from it did originally in sort of medieval times. It came originally as sort of like as praising God. So there was this one of the big divisions in the English church in the Reformation was the fact that the Catholics, of course, which was the dominant, which was basically the only religion in Western Europe. Yeah. That they had all this finery. They had stained glass windows. They had statues. They had painted statues. They had icons and stuff. And then you had Luther and the Calvinists and so forth, and they were saying this is against God. So the Catholics were saying we are praising God with all this beauty and this finery and stuff.
No, and they're idolatizing.
Well, that's it. And so the Lutherans and the Calvinists said, no, this is idolatrous. So you had, and that's something that happened. So that's why you have. You go to Dutch churches and they're very plain and very simple and they're whitewashed because, of course, they were taken over by the Protestants. The Protestants removed the Catholic art that was there before, the Catholic stained glass window and stuff, and they painted it all white.
Yeah, the Protestants should have left it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've lost a lot of art because of that.
What are you? Are you Protestant or are you Christian?
My family is Protestant. Yeah. Well, okay. It's a mixture of Protestant and Catholic. So.
Okay, but what are you? Your family is not you specifically as an identifying individual.
I would identify myself as a cultural Christian, more Protestant than Catholic.
Okay, cool. Glad to hear you're on the winning team. No, kidding. Keep going.
Well, I think we're all losing at the moment, but. Yeah. So anyway, so that that was part of the research for the book, because I had to talk about, why people destroy things, and people destroy things for different reasons, and sometimes it's religious, sometimes it's political, sometimes it's to do with the changing of a regime. So when the dictator falls, his statues are pulled down and stuff. And so so I get this question quite a lot, because I've written a number of articles saying we should try and preserve as much art as possible. And then, of course, people say, "Oh, but what about the statues of Stalin? What about the statues of Lenin and Mao and stuff? Would you keep those?" And I would say, "Well,
it's a moment in history."
I would say keep some.
Yeah.
Remove others if you have lots of duplicates, because you find like some of them are produced in factories, so you just have like standard busts and they're cast, and there's like 10,000 of them, one in every government office across the country. So in those cases, you can destroy those or repurpose them or whatever, because they're just duplicates. But I would say try and keep some, at least some. If you can't keep them in the original place, then maybe relocate them to a museum or sculpture garden. But I would say keep some, even if it is of a dictator. And,
well, yeah, it's not like having something like that doesn't equate or equal praise. It just means this is here. This is a thing.
And also, it's a way of teaching about things that existed in the past, and you just say, well, this is part of our past, for better or for worse. This is part of our past, and that's why I disagree with the removal of Confederate statues, because I believe you should have these statues. I mean, they were erected for different reasons. Some of them were built as basically monuments, funeral memorials, basically to say, this is for all the soldiers who died fighting for our cause, and they were on the losing side, but they were still men, and they were brothers and fathers, and they were members of their family, and they are missed, and we would like to show that we pay respect to them, even though we don't agree with all of the ideas they were fighting for. But of course, many of these soldiers were fighting because they wanted to protect their families or their state or their religion or whatever. They weren't necessarily in favor of slavery. Some of them were, fair enough. But these not monuments praising slavery. I can't think of any of the monuments that were taken down.
It's not like they're going, yay, slavery. It's not.
Yeah, there's none of them. Okay, I mean, so I think they should be kept, and you should say, and you should show people, and you should say, this is important part of our history. This is how people commemorated it 100, 150 years ago, 50 years ago. We feel a bit differently now. What do you think? And you have this here, because the problem is that when you start removing this, it never, I mean, there are various reasons why you shouldn't remove them. But so first of all, you remove statues, basically you're encouraging mob violence. You remove statues, you're actually punishing the descendants. This is like a political thing against the living people, against the descendants.
Sorry.
Yeah. You're removing speech, because this is the speech of people 150 years ago. So people say, oh, we're in favor of hearing diversity of opinion. Well, how about listening to the diversity of opinion from people 150 years ago? Because this is what they were saying this is what they wanted to leave us. This is what they wanted to pass on. And I think we should keep it, even if we say, actually, we disagree with some of their ideas. And that's just aside from the point that some of this is really wonderful art. Some of it not so much, but yeah. But also taste change, because you remember there was a stage when Victorian art was despised. People were people were throwing it out. People were taking great big paintings and just throwing them out because it was old fashioned. And now taste has changed, and now a lot of people are really interested in Victorian art and pre-Raphaelite art and so forth. And it's become very, very expensive. Well, and the best of it's become very expensive. So we have to remember that taste change, and also political understanding changes. So that's why we should be as tolerant as possible and try and preserve as much as possible.
Tolerant to a point. Don't say as much as possible, because to be tolerant as possible means accepting pedophilia and pederasty and all that kind of stuff. You mean tolerant toward a certain point with art, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a fine line.
Tolerance has become intolerable. Sorry, keep going.
Well, yeah, I mean, but yeah, it's a difficult point, because of course there are some things that you shouldn't tolerate and things that you should tolerate.
Absolutely. We have a lot of moral compass.
But I mean, I think that you can keep some stuff if it's of a very high quality, and just simply say, well, this is a good example of this, but we don't encourage this. This or that isn't legal. Obviously this wouldn't be like child pornography or anything, but sort of. I mean, I think for political statues, for historical monuments, I can't see a good reason for destroying anything.
Contextually. Yeah. All right, guys, you can start asking your questions. Wasn't art following the Depression? It was a way to remain sane and close to God during the trials of poverty.
Yeah, what you often had was there was this practice, the Catholic practice of the ex voto. So what you would have is, like, you would pray to a particular saint. A particular saint would be associated with a cure for, there was the particular important ones were like sort of childbirth. So obviously childbirth was extremely.
My light just went out. My light just went out. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. So childbirth obviously was an extremely important time, and it was a very dangerous time, especially historically. So you would pray to a particular saint, and if you were cured or you were saved, or if you didn't die in childbirth, or if a certain ailment was cured, what you would do is you would paint a little picture, and you would leave it at the shrine to show that you were acknowledging that the saint had interceded on your behalf. And you find this also more generally with people making art to thank God as a way of saying, oh no, I'm dedicating my labor to you because you blessed me with healing or something like that.
I understand. Brett Weary, Alexander, what do you think about the situation in America?
It's not very good at the moment. Politically speaking, I think I think there'll be trouble ahead, whatever happens. I hope that the election passes off peacefully, and that there is a clear winner, and that there isn't too much sort of political interference or sort of ballot harvesting.
Yeah, the Russians. Yeah.
Well, it's not. You're not going to have to worry about the Russians. It's
no, not at all. That was a nothing burger, as they say.
Yeah, I think the problem might be slightly closer to home for Americans.
So
anyway,
sure,
I hope things go well, and I hope that everyone stays safe there. And I also hope that people remain, quite restrained and measured in their responses. But my thoughts are with my American friends.
Yeah, well, for sure. Okay, question. Here we go. What is your favorite decade of cinema and why, both in terms of theme and style?
I'm probably going to go for something. I would say I'm a big fan of the films of David Lynch. So I would say maybe the 1980s. So you got Blue Velvet and you got Dune, and I know Dune is a famously mocked film by David Lynch, but that's
you're allowed to have your own taste. Yeah, fair enough. Do you believe that because you're an art critic, that makes you automatically able to also critique other things? That
No.
No?
Well, sometimes it carries over. So, like your critical
exactly. It overlaps, right? That's what
carry over. But your expertise doesn't. So, like for example, when someone asks you to critique photography, it's like, well, I can talk about the conventions of painting, but I'm not sure about the conventions of photography. I'm also not sure about the technical limitations of photography in this period. So it's a little bit difficult. I try and stick mainly to what I'm good at. And so also that means I tend to specialize in art that I really like. So I don't like writing negative reviews. So I don't really review contemporary art because I don't like it very much. So I will stick to modernism, to Renaissance art, to impressionism and so forth, because those are the areas that I really enjoy.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, I just thought I'd ask that. Let's have a look at, here we go. We learnt from, have we learned from history? War was it ever good? Jeez, I can't read.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are certain wars that you have to fight. There are some that are perhaps unwise. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, and obviously, I mean, it'd be nice if you had like the non-aggression principle, so that no states were ever infringing on other states. But when it happens, you have to be able to defend yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll have to. Yeah, war can be justified, but I wouldn't say necessarily as a last resort. But it'd be like right down at the bottom of your list. It'd be the last thing that you would choose, almost the last thing you would choose. But then there are times when, it's like in the life of a nation. It's like, well, you submit to the law and you follow the law, but at some point you may have to rise up. You may have to risk your own life in order to free yourself and to free your family and your community from tyranny. Yeah.
So this person, Port, wrote something earlier. It's not a question, but I think it's the thing is with Peace Christ.
Yeah. So this is a photograph by Andre Serrano, and it's of a crucifix with Christ on it, and it's in this sort of orangey green liquid. And of course, you don't know. And if you don't know what it is, it just looks kind of like a bit sort of
blasphemous,
odd and strange, and sort of But of course, once you're told that it's actually submerged in urine, of course, yeah, it takes on different connotation. As an
Mm-hmm.
image, it's actually quite attractive. Yeah, but of course, there was
Kind of, you're sort of saying when he's just outlined here, you haven't even read the whole thing. That's funny.
oh yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
that's
so
funny.
and but he's correct. So
Yeah, yeah, he's a
and
critic too.
it's kind of like a conceptual work, because
Yeah,
when you have that extra piece of information which isn't visible, then suddenly
okay,
it changes the meaning of the work. Because
gotcha.
Andre Serrano was a gay artist. I'm not sure if he's still alive.
Oh,
He was a gay artist and he was a Catholic, and he felt quite hostile towards the Catholic Church. So this was obviously his expression of, his negative feelings. But as a work of art, it's actually quite attractive to look at, paradoxically.
yeah. Oh, there. Is that the real Aussie Mozzie? Sorry, I had a fake Aussie Mozzie show up. I'm like, I know that's not him.
Well, I mean, it's perfectly fair to say that you feel it is degenerate. Yes, I mean, I'm not going to argue against that.
Yeah, no, it sounds degenerate. When geez, I'm struggling to read his specific. Only his comments do I struggle with. When then is it just and right? Yeah, I got it.
Is it just and right
Yes.
to start a revolution against this mentioned tyranny?
Yeah, you read them. I think it's easier. You're more intelligent than I am.
I would ask the people in Melbourne. When is the point where you rise up and do something about? Was it Chairman Dan?
Yes, Chairman Dan. Oh,
yeah. Okay. Well, I won't say too much on that because your stream will get taken down. But yeah, it's
for
very
mocking him.
Hmm?
For mocking Oz for mocking our premier. I don't think so. Sorry, but keep going.
Well, it's a difficult one. It's something that you have to decide on your own. But obviously, you've got to. You can't do it entirely independently. You can't say, you have your own breaking point, and at this point, if something goes beyond that line, then I am automatically going to resort to force.
You could call him this.
It's something because then you've got people who've got all sorts of different thresholds, and of course this is like the excuse of a psychopath. Because the psychopath just responds with violence as soon as they're challenged. Not always, but some psychopaths respond with violence as soon as they're challenged, as soon as they encounter any restriction at all.
Mm-hmm.
And this was certainly what was happening with. So we know with Stalin and Hitler, they often reacted very, very violently to the slightest challenge. But this was also a tactical thing because they knew that this reaction would terrify people, so people wouldn't challenge them in the future. So I would say, in brief, consult with people you trust and talk to them about where you think the line is.
Yeah. Do you believe memes or memeing has any relevance in art?
In a way, I mean, you could say that a particular work of art is just a successful meme because it ends up getting reproduced. So like the Mona Lisa, of course, most famous painting in the world, most reproduced painting in the world. How is it different from a meme? Well, technically, I would say it's no different from a meme because it's like a sort of an agent, an article that gets sort of replicated because it's being shared, because people like it, I guess, because people respect it, because it's iconic, because people like to have something iconic that they can riff on. So you can find parodies, of course, cats and dogs as Mona Lisa. One of the most famous parodies was one that I mentioned actually in the new book in Iconoclasm, and that is
Iconoclasm.
And that
that's a good word.
Marcel Duchamp, who did the urinal as the ready-made work of art. He found a postcard of Mona Lisa and he drew like moustaches. And this was in, I think, what was this? Yes, page 59. Page 59. In 1919, leading Dadaist Marcel Duchamp defaced a reproduction of Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa with a moustache. And he added a title underneath, which kind of suggested that she was that she was sexually receptive.
Oh,
There you are. That's modern art for you.
modern art. Could artwork take down the tyrannical authoritarianism and its propaganda currently in the airwaves?
I don't know. I mean, you'd like to hope so, but I mean that might be overestimating the power of art. And certainly, I mean, Picasso, famous communist, who wasn't really a communist. I think when you look at artists like Picasso who've become communist, they're basically, it's an expression of class solidarity. They're not really politically engaged. They don't believe in the collectivization of agriculture.
Okay.
They're basically just saying, you know, I stand with you, working people. So Picasso painted Guernica to complain against fascism, to complain against Franco, and Franco lived longer than Picasso, and it didn't change anything. But it's an iconic
Franco. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Do you want to read that out and answer it?
Do you think that singers and actors are getting too involved in politics? Yes. I don't think that singers and actors are, by and large, unless you become famous as a political singer, like a folk singer or whatever. I don't think moving into politics, especially party politics, I think making general points about compassion or restraint or actual, you know, national dignity or pride in your country or whatever, I think these are perfectly reasonable points to have. But I think getting involved in party politics, saying vote for this president or that candidate or whatever, I think that's unwise. I think it also devalues your ability to listen to their stuff with an open mind, because you're always thinking, well, you know, I'm listening to you sing this song, but, you know, I know that your political beliefs are kind of, you know, a little bit off. And also, I think it tends to show up their ignorance because they are often not well informed.
Yeah, well, I personally won't make a decision about any politics unless I know what Taylor Swift thinks. Anyway, let's move to the next question. That's a joke, people. What do you think of the Australian art critic Robert Hughes?
I've got mixed feelings. I think he was generally pretty good. I disagree with some of his particular choices. He had quite a high opinion of Lucian Freud. I don't have a very high opinion of Lucian Freud as a realist painter. He was quite critical of Philip Guston, the American artist. I have a high opinion of Philip Guston. So I've got mixed feelings. I'm glad that he was a voice for sort of traditional values, and he was quite assertive, and he was, you know, he was well informed. But I disagree with some of his judgments.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I don't really know who he is, so I'm just asking the questions the people want. Okay, let's go back to here. Okay. I have spotted some fabulous artistic expressions depicting that Dan is in fact a dictator. Do you think this is wearing his credibility and popularity down?
Well, I don't know about sort of his political standing or his political rating or his popularity or whatever, but I would say that yes, that humor is, especially cartoons, are a really, really effective way of cutting down politicians to size, because there's some in every culture you've got political cartoonists, and they sometimes define an image. And so, you know, for example, we had political cartoons in the 1980s depicting Margaret Thatcher and various ministers in particular ways, and those were always the ways you always thought of them, even though it was a caricature.
Yeah.
And I know that, you know, I'm sure that in Australia you've got certain great cartoonists, and they've done art regarding political figures, and you can't look at this person without thinking, oh, they're the people who, you know, etc., etc. So I think that political cartoons, and especially now as memes that you can share online, I think that there are excellent ways of poking fun at especially authoritarian politicians. So I would say good luck and carry on.
Okay, another question. Aussie, you arrived late, and yes, this sort of was addressed, but what about architecture? Modern versus traditional architecture, beauty versus modernism, in my opinion.
Yeah. So there is a division, but this is also a division that you find in art, that some people tend to have very strong feelings about loving traditional art and despising modern art or modernist art, and some people feel the same about buildings as well. I think the problem with I think that's a distinction that you can easily keep in art, because art is not practical. The problem is, okay, what do you do about buildings? How are you going to build a motorway bridge, a freeway bridge? Are you going to build it in concrete, or are you going to try and build it in wood with like little curls and lots of decoration? Are you going to try and build a Gothic airport?
Yeah, I got that. That'd be horrible. A Gothic airport, I would not like that at all.
Are you going to have like stone pillars in the middle of your swimming pool?
Yeah.
Or you can have a car park made out of brick and wood. I mean, so you've got the problem that you've got new materials that you have to use for new structures which have new purposes, and it's really difficult not to have modern styling, clean styling that's engineering that's appropriate for your structure. So I think that the problem with I think that's kind of you can certainly build old-fashioned small-scale houses in traditional ways, and you can do that now, and they can be beautiful. You can also incorporate modern technology as well, but for certain structures, you've got to use new materials, and that demands that they're used in modern ways. Although you can certainly pay reference to older structures, older designs. Maybe have a few stylistic touches that relate to, especially your country. I mean, I think it's really important to have an architecture that reflects the history of your country. But it is difficult to do with modern structures and modern materials.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. That sounds very true. Let's go down. I didn't expect so many people to have questions. This has been a very classy live. What do you think about political movies or documentaries, Alexander?
I quite like them. It depends on. It's not actually a question of whether it depends on whether I like them, whether I agree with the politics or not. Because I would recommend everyone watch the documentaries of Adam Curtis. You can find these on YouTube.
Okay.
He's a bit of an old school leftist, and I disagree with him on a lot of points. But he has got some fascinating documentaries. Hypernormalization is a very interesting one. It talks about Trump and Putin. And how like the spectacle of sensation and overwhelming people with lies and with uncertainty kind of disorientates people and makes people unable to sort of concentrate or form a rational kind of opposition to these politicians.
Yeah.
Really, it's kind of a long documentary, but it's really worth a look. Also, his early documentaries about psychiatry, and about art and dictatorships and so forth. And these were made in like the 1990s. You can find most of these on YouTube. I really recommend them.
Okay, great. All right, let's keep going down. Let's have a look. We look for proper questions. What about the Austrian? Oh, okay, never mind. That was good. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you know who you're talking about.
Oh, I don't. I'm not following the exact conversation going on.
He was a famous man in Germany in the 1940s.
Oh, okay, I know who you're talking about. He created the SWA.
I'm reserving comment.
Yeah, no, exactly. Okay, hang on. Apparently, Adam Curtis is a legend. All right, here we go. Anyone asked about Banksy? No, no one has asked about Banksy. Banksy. Who's that? What's Banksy? Who's Banksy?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you the short version. I have written. He's an artist, an English artist, a graffiti artist, street artist.
Okay.
Who's kind of he's supposed to be he's kind of anti-establishment.
Okay.
But you find that all of his positions align with the conventional elite, the cosmopolitan left-wing people,
Okay.
the politicians, and who run the media or have dominance in the media. So actually, you find that what his position, you know, he has like all sorts of positions, like, oh, the English are all racist, the immigrants are wonderful, that we should welcome in.
Oh, lefty. Yeah.
It's like, oh, capitalism is bad, and it's like,
Okay.
yeah, you seem to have done very well from capitalism, because he's very rich and famous.
Yeah.
And also he has this thing of like, oh, you know, he went to the West Bank and he did some art on the wall between the West Bank territories and Israel.
Okay. Yeah.
And the art is okay, but he has this assumption that the Palestinians are all victims, and that the Jews, the Israelis, are just aggressors, and he's got this automatic position which left wingers tend to assume.
And what is your opinion?
And I disagree with his politics, and I think he's quite effective as a communicator, but I think his ideas are very shallow, and I think that he's actually extremely conventional.
Okay, cool. All right, well, that's the end of the questions. That was a really good live. I really wish that I could have put it up on my own channel with all my new American audience, but yeah, sorry about that. Like my channel.
It's been fun.
Yeah, it has. It's actually been a very good discussion. Something that I wasn't aware that I could hold. I didn't think I could hold up my end on that, but I feel like I hope I did okay.
Yeah, you did. I mean, you're especially, you're especially on the ball regarding the religious stuff. So yeah.
Oh yes, I am. Yeah. Well, that was good. I really enjoyed it. Okay, cool. Well, I'd love to have you back for a panel show, like you and a couple of other people, to discuss something like something in the I think political correctness realm. That way, more than one person would be able to, you know, you as an art critic would be able to come on. That'd be cool. God willing, everything works out.
Thank you very much, dear. It's been a pleasure.
No, it's been really fun. I really did enjoy this live. I got a lot of weird random accounts trying to hate on me, but that's okay. I roll with the punches. I'm a tough girl, and yeah, my channel will be back in action in a couple of weeks' time. I'm not affected by that. It'll be a nice break, to be fair. All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who chimed in and had views on art and on the critics, and yeah. I'm assuming my audience knew who you were. I'm the only one who didn't. Well, I knew who you were because you emailed me last year.
Well, they know who I am now.
Well, it sounds to me like that. Well, at least Brett Weary definitely knew who you were. Let's have a look. He's got a comment here. He seems to be a fan. How is Notre Dame Church's restoration going along in Paris? Last question. No one can ask any more questions, okay? I have to wake up at 4:45 in the morning.
I haven't got any up-to-date information on that, but I'm glad that they're restoring it to the way it was, because they had this idea of adding some glass roof, and
Paul Joseph Watson said that freaked me out.
Yeah, President Macron wanted to get his sticky little fingers all over it.
What a moron! Yeah,
but they've completely ditched that idea, so it's going to be rebuilt as it was. And I think that's the appropriate thing to do. So
good. All right, cool. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Tune in next week on this channel for the second live, whatever it is I end up doing. Will be on this channel, and then the following week we'll be back to my own channel. All right, bye guys. I'm just going to end broadcast now. End broadcast. Hang on. I always do this.